My name is Fabricius, and I'm the curator of the In Situ project. I am from Denmark. Oh, thank you. I am from Denmark. I work at an institution called Kunsthal Aarhus. And then I also work at a Danish, the Artist Association, the Art Council, that deals with commissions and works in public spaces. So I've been thrilled to come here and do this project, both because it contains the works inside here, the 11 works that are in situ, but then I've also been part of the Billboard Committee that selected works for public spaces, billboards that you see along the highway. That's a thing that's been really close to my heart for like a long time, because you get surprised, you do your daily stuff, you drive, you see the city, and then all of a sudden there's like an artwork that looks different than all the other commercials. So Override is also kind of like one of my things that I've done here in Chicago. Basically, my history with Chicago goes back to being a freelance curator and working with alternative spaces. In '97, I did a show with two local artist curators, Michelle Grabner and Brad Killam, and a Danish writer called Lars Bang Larsen. And we did like 15 shows in the uncomfortable spaces, they were called back then. It was like small galleries, artist-run spaces, 10 in 1, Tough Gallery, Beret International, Gallery 400, Innova in Milwaukee, and some others. But anyway, that's a long time ago. But it was my introduction to Chicago. So I sort of like saw the small gallery scene. I saw the alternative scene. I saw New Art Examiner and magazines that popped up. I saw this really funny cartoon shop that was close to where Stephanie lives and where the Rainbow Club is, and it was called Quimby's Queer Store. So that was how I got introduced to like so many Chicago cartoonists that I love, and since have become very popular. Daniel Klaus, who has made Ghost World, and Chris Ware, who has done a lot of scenes and stuff like that. So that was kind of like I dived into or snaked into the Chicago scene by going through the uncomfortable spaces, the alternative scene, and so on. I still enjoy that, and I think it's great that there's such a big fair that lifts up the whole scene and energize the art scene. So I've been here several times, and I just like the energy here. Last thing I did was I curated a show in Denmark with Karen Sitter that traveled to MCA, so we collaborated. That's 3 years ago. And now I'm here doing this. And I'm going to give you just a brief presentation of my selection. I think it's kind of more important to go out and see the works in real, but I'll give you some few reference images. Basically, I've tried to pair artists 2 and 2 within sort of short themes. This is a work by Janine Antoni. It's a work, it's right out here. It's a work that I've always admired her. I've always thought she was amazing because she was working with the body. She was working with sculpture. And I remember like these in '93, there was these sculptures. One was called Lick, the other one was called Lather, and one was made out of, it was portraits of her. One was made out of chocolate, the other one was made out of soap. So she was kind of playing with the traditional way of thinking sculpture, thinking body, and kind of dissolving also the body. And in this piece, she kind of like shows the production or the leather that is used to produce a bag, and the backpack is also so like referring to the body because you wear it. And this specific backpack is a backpack that she had as a teenager. So it's sort of like has a reference to her own sort of like teenage life or her own story, and carrying this bag. So she's one of the artists that I've always liked. I've always been impressed by how she handles the body, how she handles performance in a space. But I've never worked with her. And this was a great opportunity to actually show a work by her. Other artists are much younger. Some I've worked with. So the range of 11 artists spans from, I would say, around 30 years old to around 80 years old. And also the techniques vary. But one thing is like the body, there's gender, there's identity, there's history, and there's also what you could say things in between. And I'll show you some examples. So this is also Janine Antoni. This is a sculpture, a marble sculpture that is 3 years old. And she did these, she did like a marble breast, she did a marble ear, she did like ribs. I thought I just wanted to show you this because the younger generation of artists, they of course use traditional materials, but they also use a lot of animation, a lot of video. That would be kind of like, you could say the body, but also the post-body, the post-human body. Stine Deschamps and Marie Munk, they're here. They're two Danish artists. They graduated 2 years ago, so they're just about 30. And I thought it was interesting to bring them here, to have a little trace of Denmark in between the 11 works. And I saw their work in a non-profit space in Copenhagen, and I got really attracted and appalled at the same time. Stine, she does the video animations, and Marie Munk, she does like sculptural elements that are really flashy, like done out of latex. But they're like different from Janine Antoni because you can touch Janine Antoni, you can feel the hardness, but here with Munk you can feel the softness. You can see the blood veins in this latex. They're shown together with these videos and this blue curtain. So this was how it was stalled the first time at a gallery in London. And the gallery is also here at the fair, so you can go and see more works by Stine and Marie. So this is kind of like the full installation, and you may be able to see kind of like the fleshiness of the veins here, and body shapes. You could touch them, you could sit on them. Sometimes when Munk does her sculptures, she also has these kind of vibrators inside, built into the sculpture. So you sit there and then you get it like you see the exhibition, and you get a like small kind of weird massage at the same time. And talking about the body and the fragmented body, like how do we portray our family? Like how do we think of sculpture in a traditional way and also try and take it another step further? This also deals with the body, but it deals with art history at the same time. It's a German artist called Lena Henka. She's based in New York, has a studio in New Jersey, and she's been living here for, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. But what you see here, the wooden structure is kind of like a traditional building technique, German building technique, that she has, like, usually it stands like this, but she has flipped it so it lies down. And the purple sculptures are basically, some of you may recognize some of them. For instance, this is a Man Ray. This is a Matisse. And this is Henri Laurent. Basically classic modernistic artists. So she has made casts of them. And basically, the work started out when her parents got divorced. They were married for 30 years. And then they got divorced, and she didn't know how to deal with it or handle that. So she made a cartoon in the beginning where all the family members got characters of modern sculptures. So modernistic sculptures from the 20th century. That was her first take. Then she made it into this new take where the sculptures basically were not printed as a cartoon anymore, but actually reproduced as the classic sculptures. So these are her family members. So her mom and dad and her two brothers. Her parents' new partners. And there's also one of her friends. This is another artist, her friend Marie Kalberg. This is actually the artist herself. That's the Matisse. So she has reproduced herself as Matisse. This is her father down here. And her father's new wife is also among these. And do you want to guess what sculpture that might be? Any guesses? Sorry? Yes. We have the. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so that's a different way of using traditional sculpture and doing a modernistic portrait, or like a sort of like a stepping on history, stepping on tradition, but taking it a step further and telling a personal story. That's the modern. And of course, the body, like what we do, what we buy, we always, every day we take political choices. So the body and the consuming body is of course also political, and it deals with our identity, with our history. This is a work by Corinne Smith. It's a piece called "Sky Will Learn Sky," and it's taken from a writer, Coltrane, Alice Coltrane, who was married to John Coltrane, and she was like into spiritualism and the divine, and the artist Smith thought it was like a very poetic sentence, so she took it and she used it in one of her films, where she had women kind of demonstrating with a sign each. So they were in Chicago, they were also at the watchtowers, and I think I have an image. No. Oh. But kind of like using like a classical way of demonstrating, but with a piece of poetry, with a piece of African American history. And talking about African American history, this is another piece, and this is by Rodney Macmillan. It's called 4443 Prospect Avenue. It's from 2009. We'll see all these works later on, so we can get close and everything. Yeah, you can see it. It's like it's. All right, it's just like if you look at it, it's like this kind of thick black paint. He's done this piece, and then he's also done a piece. This is the address in Los Angeles is actually his old home address. So it's like a replica of his house where he used to live. And later on, he did a piece of same size, more or less, a little bit bigger, and made out of latex. So the latex was kind of like heavy and sogging. And kind of also stitched, and that was like an image of the White House. So in this piece, he wants to address like how people sometimes suffer if they have high mortgages. If this was in kind of like when you think about when it was made in 09, that was kind of like the peak of financial crisis. So a lot of people, they lost their home or had to leave their home, and this frustration and like problem is like, you know, yeah. And he also did this White House piece, and I think I might have one. Yes, there you go. So that's the White House. So that's also, of course, like addressing a political issue, because it's called the White House. It's not called the Black House. It was partially built by slaves. So like being an African American artist, he deals with identity and with the history. And I thought that was also important to address when we talk about the body and history and identity. Neil Beloufa, he's Algerian French. He's one of the younger ones in SITU project. And there are 3 pieces, 3 wall pieces. And I think they're really incredible. This is like almost abstract. It reminds me of a really, really large iPhone. It's the size of the TV itself, so you can imagine the physical scale of it. And I think of it as an iPhone because it's like kind of like the way he uses the resin, the way it cracks reminds me of my iPhone because I drop it all the time. And I kind of like how he sort of like massages almost like political issues into his work. This you may not be like super representative of that political side of his work, but he uses kind of very elegantly sort of like very aesthetical choices with the political and with the fiction and the reality. There's a work down there where he where there's a video inserted into. I might have. This is a work from Paris. This was an amazing show, like really good show at Palais de Tokyo in Paris. And he basically, you walked into this really emotional sculptural maze of works. And that was also like where you didn't quite know what was real, what was fake. And in these times where news can be real or can be manipulated, I thought it was an amazing piece. This is Katie Rosen. She has worked with text since the late 80s. She's been super consequent, using vinyl on wall or paint on wall, and using the sort of like the fragility and sort of like the space between words and texts. And we all know when we read a book or when we read a text, there's something in between the lines. And that's what I really like, how she simplifies things with text, but also makes us think. And this, you'll see it outside by the entrance. Look at this. And then when you look at, there's 2 texts, they're almost identical. The words are the same, but the punctuation is different on either side of the doorway. And by punctuation, or by how you write a sentence with punctuation, you change the or make it a completely different meaning. And that's kind of like when I say like there's something between the lines, that is very sort of like visual out there, because it's really literally like just punctuation that changes the whole meaning of the work. This is another work by her, and this is, can you guess what this is? Or what the letters would, what they would mean? It's, like I said, it's like an abbreviation of, you know, Stephanie.
White House versus America.
Versus America. So that's also like by just having 3 letters, she creates an abstraction, and we can of course read a lot of stuff into it, but it's also like in between the lines, there's like a political message. This is one of the older artists. He's born in 1941, Morgan Fisher. He started out with films in Los Angeles and worked with film productions. He collected all the kind of the trash or all the film strips, like when it was good old films on vinyl. And he put them together as kind of like structuralist, minimalist films and expressions. It's an artist I've followed for like many years. And I just wanted to select this work because it's basically, it fills a whole space. So if it was in this space, it would basically, one piece would be in that corner and one piece would be in that corner. So it stretches out the space. So in comparison with K. Rosen, it sort of like brings the space together. It shows this void between the works. And this is actually how I got to work with Morgan Fisher. So this is one of the artists that I have worked with in the past. This was a project I did in Los Angeles in 2003, where I was like standing on a street corner in Los Angeles with sandwich boards made by the artists. And Morgan being, he's very precise when he does his stuff. So he was very worried about the sandwich board, which is a text that you see on advertising billboards for real estate, but taking it down, putting it on a person on cardboard with like these weird straps, it becomes a message about homelessness. And there's, I think I don't know if it's still like that, but at the time I think it was like a really, really high number of, like I think 65% of all homeless people, they live in California. So he wanted to address a political issue by taking a commercial sentence and flipping it around and putting on a body in Los Angeles. Dan Peterman is also, he's a local artist. It's an artist that I've admired for many years. And he was actually also part, back then in 97 when I did this project in the uncomfortable spaces, he had a recycling farm down in South Chicago. It burned down in 2001, but he hosted one of the exhibitions, so he was also one of the uncomfortable spaces. He has been incredible. Since like the late 80s, he has just worked with recycled material, community work. And of course, we talk about our waste now. We talk about like how we should take care of the planet. But as a sort of like a strategy, since like whenever he started as an artist, he has recycled material. So what you see here, it may appear as like a Donald Judd or Saul Lewitt or something like that, but all the materials here are basically recycled materials. So he takes the minimalist tradition, but brings it into a community way of thinking and like recycling material. So he does shelving units, he does chairs, he does a lot of stuff. And I think that's admirable that he's been so consequent in working in that way. This is the in situ work. This is another artist. I met him also in Chicago in 97, so I thought it was important to bring some of those people back. This is Scott Reeder. He's based in Detroit these days. And he has done things at art fairs before, but never sort of like always, like he has always twisted the idea of the art fair. He has done sort of like a secret club called Club Nuts. He has done the dark fair where everything was lit by candles and not electrical lights. And I thought that kind of strategy, this kind of artist initiative, non-profit initiative way of approaching an art fair is fun. So I invited him and we discussed several proposals back and forth, and he ended up with this kiosk. Inside the kiosk, he sits in a like cut hole, so he's kind of trapped in the hole. He can't move, so people can stand and talk to him for like 2 hours if they wanted to. And there's no door, so he can't, when he has to pee, he has to like jump out of the hole and like out of the window. And inside the hole, he sells monochrome bumper stickers. And they are like at the price of between $4 and $10. The titles of the colors are electric green or annoying yellow or Versailles gold. Outside, there's all these posters, and he sent an email out to like 100 of his friends that are artists and said, do you want to be part of this? Do you want to advertise something? You can advertise anything. And then he basically thought he would get 15 answers back, but he got like 60 or 70 different kind of answers back. So there's all kinds of different commercials for shows or for like just artworks or whatever. You have a look down there. this is another artist that is Chicago-based. Her name is Mari Eastman, and I specifically asked her to think about I like works that sort of surprise you. I like works that are maybe in unconventional spaces, off spaces, and basically we come to the fair. A lot of us meet at the cafe. We have food, and we look at art. And a lot of us also have to go and pee afterwards. So that's a kind of like a communal space where everybody has to meet, no matter how big your wallet is. It's a place we meet. So I asked her to think about that, if she wanted to do that, and she liked the idea. And then she's a brilliant painter. She's a really good painter, but I wanted to show her on YouTube. There's like 2 things that is the most popular ever. And that's, of course, babies falling and cats doing crazy stuff. And she does these really nice portraits of cats. So she did 7 unique works of cats, and they were displayed in the bathroom. Oh. That's it. Basically now I think we should walk around and look at the work, short tour. Then you'll see them in the flesh and you can see the details. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. And if you want to ask Scott, reader, 1,000 questions, he's there. And I dare you.